So my name is Noam Morningstar-Kywi. I am a scientist here at Simulations Plus, and today I'll be talking about our verification suite for GPX. So what is the verification suite? In short, it is a script that comes installed with GPX that you can run to make sure that GPX itself is installed properly on the computer and is running simulations correctly. And it does that by automatically running a series of test projects that we have created, as well as some controls via the command line interface for GPX, and compares the simulation outputs with the expected so-called golden reference results that we have come up with. So I'll talk a bit about what the verification suite entails and the report that comes out of it, and then how we came up with those reference results, and then lastly, how to run it. So the test projects that come with the verification suite, we have 17 of them, as well as 2 controls that comprise 89 simulations in total, some of those with multiple compounds. And these cover 5 modules in GPX, our core GastroPlus, of course, ADMET predictor, the PBPK module, the metabolism and transport, and PK+. And of course, each of these is going to have an individual license as well, which we will come to. And the comparison includes a couple different parts. First, it checks just to make sure that it ran at all, independent of the results. Then it goes on to compare the results. So our summary outputs is first things like FA, FDP, F, Cmax, AUC. Then it looks at the CP time profiles for each compound in the simulation and compares those results to the full profile to the expected results. And then for each example, we have several example-specific series. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we have enterohepatic circulation for that test case, it will compare the mass in the bile and the mass reaching the duodenum, as well as the CP time profile. So we try and hit all relevant aspects of these simulations. And when it does these checks, it checks both the absolute and the percent error, so the difference between the simulation that's just run the test case and the reference results with a 1% tolerance. And when all that is done, it puts out a summary PDF report, which will tell you whether or not the verification was a success. So if we look at some examples of those reports, this is the one-page PDF report that comes out. It's a read-only PDF report, but it does give you the option to print it out. And so if we look at the features on it, this here is an example of one that passed fully. So we have the overall result that it passed, the time that it was run, the MAC address of the computer that ran it, a summary of the tests attempted, compared, and passed, as well as the controls that we included. And then for each test case, it lists them here and confirms whether both the run and the actual comparison of the results did pass. Here is another example of one that passed, however, for limited licensing. So this is an example that we ran with only the core GastroPlus license and the ADMET predictor license enabled. So we can see here that the ADMET predictor compartmental and some of our basic simulations did pass both the run and the comparison, but the second ADMET predictor example depends on the PBPK module, as do some of these other test cases, and then our metabolism and PK+ licenses as well. So we'll check these, it will try and detect the licenses, and it will let you know that the license wasn't found. But this is still considered a pass for those modules which are licensed. Some examples of ones that failed. Here is one that failed everything because we manually kind of curated this and locked out some files from the install. So this was missing some files and it failed everything. It tries to give you a bit more information about what happened in the report, but at the end of the day, if you have a failed verification, it is recommended that you just initiate a support call so we can help sort that out for you. And one more example where it failed, just to show you the variety, is this is one where PK+ did work. We didn't have licensing for some modules, but then the comparison failed for some of the other tests that were run. So it did run it successfully, but the results didn't come out correctly for some reason. And so the comparison failed on this one. So how did we get our reference results? In most cases, this was a comparison to the legacy version of Gastro, although GPX does contain some new features. in which case we just validated the results based on what we expected for those simulations. So this is a plot showing some simulations, a select simulation from each of our test cases for the basic simulations. So in orange, we have our compartmental simulation. Again, we have multiple simulations for each test case. I'm just showing one here for clarity. So the orange line shows the GPX simulation, while the legacy results are shown as the squares. And we can see that this is a perfect match for those. And this is how we verified our golden results, which are then what the test cases run on your computer would be compared to. For the PBPK simple simulation, we see the same thing. And then for the simplified simulation, simplified absorption models are new in GPX, so we don't have a legacy comparator for that. But we do have the ability to compare it just to simple PK calculations to make sure we are getting the expected results. Another example, this is one of the tests from ADMET Predictor for the PBPK ADMET Predictor import. There are actually 21 compounds done in this test, but just for visual clarity, I only chose to show 3. And we can see the same thing where the GPX results match pretty much perfectly with the legacy results. And one more example, this is from the controlled release example, again showing 1 simulation out of the 8 that are run with that test case. The previous 2 slides, the plots there showed the CP time profiles. Here I'm showing some of the other series that are examined. So with controlled release, of course, what is of interest to us is the amount released, dissolved, undissolved in the gastrointestinal tract. And that's what we're looking at here is from one of the simulations, those 3 series in GPX versus the legacy GastroPlus. And once again, we can see that they match. So the perhaps most important part here is how to run verification suite and view the results. As mentioned, all files required are included with the GPX installation. So that includes both the verification suite X and the reference projects that will be used to create the test cases. And I should note that those files for the reference projects, the verification suite does check those before running to make sure that they are exactly as expected. So if anything happens to those files during install, or if anyone tries to edit them, it will do a checksum on those files, and the verification report will fail if those don't match. So to run the verification suite, first you navigate to the GPX install directory, typically in program files, and run the verification suite executable, seen here. Make sure, please, that all licenses are available first. So this means we're not running any instances of GPX or of legacy GastroPlus, because that may lead to conflicts that can have a false negative on the pass if it's not able to run because the licenses are taken up by another instance that is active. It will open up a command prompt window where it will run. At that point, you don't need to do any input. You just need to wait for it to run. Depending on the speed of the computer, this can take anywhere from 30 minutes to about 3 hours. Most of the ones that we've seen, at least in our testing, are 30 to 40 minutes. And once it is done, it'll let you know that it's complete in the command prompt window, and you're able to view the report. This is saved to the user's app data folder, as we can see here under the Simulations Plus directory, and it's GPX verification report.pdf right here. And this is the PDF that I showed the examples of previously. It will also output this report.csv, which contains much more detailed information on every simulation run. And that is to help with troubleshooting if the verification report indicates that the verification run failed, and we initiate a support call. That report.csv is going to be very helpful to our staff to help diagnose the problem. And so the instructions for this, with some more detail on how to run it and where to find the report, as well as some instructions for different localizations. We have a full PDF summarizing those instructions. It's available on ShareFile in the same place as the GPX installer. And if GPX is already installed, it's also available in the program data folder for GPX. And of course, for any questions or assistance, please email us at support@simulationsplus.com.